You can't make up the work. You can't make up the cool. You have to do rad shit. What's going on, everybody? This is the first episode of 2026. Let's just get into it. I have 7 things that I learned while building this podcast that I wanted to share with you guys. And the first thing that I I still don't fully understand the importance of this first point, which is you need to talk to someone. The temptation when you are starting a business is to try to appeal to everyone. It makes sense, right? If I'm starting this podcast, it makes sense for me to try to appeal to as many people, as broad of an audience as humanly possible. Because if you can get as many people to see the podcast and to watch the podcast, the audience would grow and it will be easier for me to build businesses around it and to monetize in so many ways that you can monetize a podcast. That's what makes sense. But from a practical sense, the smart thing to do for me is to pick someone and speak to them instead of trying to speak to everyone. Because if I end up speaking to everyone, if I try to speak to everyone meaning like I could either, the way I picked, for me at least, the choice that I made was to speak to someone who is starting a business, who is ambitious, someone who is a version of me, right? I know what I was like when I was starting out. I know the problems that I had. I know the kind of ideas that I was trying to make it to turn into reality. I know the feeling of having an idea wake me 2 a.m. in the morning. Not wake me, like keep me awake at 2 a.m. in the morning and like trying to figure out how the freak do I turn this thing into a money generating endeavor or business or project, whatever you want to call it. I know what it's like to have the urge to create something and put it in the world, right? And if I try to talk to people who are into gaming, right? I'm not a gamer. Like I don't like to to play games. I don't like to game, right? That's not what I do. It's not what I do for fun. Now, I like to go to the gym. I can talk to someone who goes to the gym. I know how to talk to them because I'm part of the world. I'm part of that sphere, right? I'm part of that life. I know the kinds of problems that someone who's going to the gym, face. And specifically, if you're going to the gym and you're skinny, because I am skinny. When I started going to the gym, I was really, really skinny. And I know the issues that I was facing, not being able to get enough, food, like all the things that I was dealing with. I know that someone else who's going to the gym and is skinny is probably gonna listen to me because I've gone through it. I know what it takes, one, to like put on muscle if you're skinny. I know the challenges that the person is going to face. By picking that person and talking to them, speaking to them, instead of trying to speak to everyone who's into fitness, I get a better chance of a better chance of getting heard and getting my message across than trying to make my message make sense to everyone. And the most important thing to understand there is that when you choose to speak to someone, is that you are also choosing not to speak to everyone, which means that you're probably going to piss some people off. And I think that's a measure of whether or not you are making good progress as a business, is when some people say that this is not for me, right? Like okay, this is a really good example. I went to see Marty Spring recently. And if you haven't seen the movie, it's a really, really good movie. But even like me saying it's a really, really good movie, it's a really, really good movie depending on who's watching it, right? Because it's a movie about a guy, I'm not going to spoil the whole thing, but a guy who's trying to be the best at ping pong, right? And they have to like go through hoops and different things to get a ticket to go to Japan to compete. And he does like really terrible things on the way to like get the ticket, the money, including leaving his wife pregnant, almost like I think she had the baby in his absence. And it ends in a really beautiful way. I loved the movie because I associate myself, the version of me associates myself with this guy because he's a guy who's going after things. Like he's choosing to be selfish, right? And I think I choose to be selfish in so many ways. So I get that part of it. But I bring up the movie as an example because when you look at the marketing of the movie, I think they did a really brilliant job at appealing to the smallest group possible. The people who believe in going after things, the people who have ambitious people. And, you can see Timothy, I don't know if you've seen the movie or if you've seen the marketing, but it was like everywhere, so you probably saw it. But he had different celebrities, but like celebrities, not just like celebrities who are known for being the gods of their fields. Steph Curry is one of them. I'm spacing on other people, but like he had them put on a jacket that's also like really fashionable and really nice to make a statement that the movie is not for everyone. The movie is for dreamers. They literally used it as a tagline. Dream big, I think. It's for dreamers. It's for people who are going for things. It's for people who are non-apologetic about doing whatever it takes for them to get where they want to go. And by appealing to the smallest group possible, this is the most important part of the whole thing, is that you also you rely on them, you rely on the smallest group possible. So for me, the skinny guys who are who are trying to get in shape, if that was the business that I was going to start. For this podcast, someone who is at the beginning of building a business and is trying to figure out how to navigate the whole process and trying to figure out, to learn from people who've done it. That person is the kind of person for me, for this podcast specifically. When I target that person, I'm betting on the fact that if they like it, they're going to share it with other people. So you target the smallest group possible who share values and are pursuing the same kind of goals that you are pursuing or that you have expertise in. And then you trust that these people are going to tell other people. They're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their family. And the movie Marty's Flame ended up like being a huge success, not because the marketing messaging appealed to everyone, but because they appealed to the smartest few who then told the many. I'm using like marketing lingo, but I think it's probably the most important thing that you can do when you start a business is if you're starting a business, say a photography business, it's not a good idea to say that you're going to do photography for everyone who comes to you seeking photography as a service. It's probably a better idea to target single people who are looking to date via online dating. Like that is really, really specific. Like that group of people, if you target them, they have needs that are different from someone who's looking for a photographer for their wedding. And the way you would talk to them, the way you would appeal to them, right? What you would say to get them to work with you, are completely different. It would be completely different than saying that you're going to work with, let's say, real estate agents or startups, because the goals and what they use the pictures for are completely different. And it's really smart to narrow down and focus on talking to someone. If you're trying to start a business, if you're trying to start communicating online, creating content, it's really, really important to talk to someone instead of talking to everyone. Talk to someone, please. A small group of people. Second point, make a promise and strive to keep it. Again, this applies to not just podcasts. It applies to all kinds of businesses. Every business, if you have a business, you are making a promise to that someone that if they work with you, what are they going to get in return? Like, what are you going to help them do? And where are you taking them, right? If we use, I don't know, let's say someone is looking for a house, they're looking for a home, right? If they work with you, what promise are you making them? What are they getting out of working with you that they're not getting out of working with Cedric somewhere? Yeah, you could say that you're making them a promise to get them a house because they're looking for a home. Or you could make them a promise that if they work with you, even better, right? That they are going to get their home in a month, in 2 months, a dream home, like the kind of home that they're looking for. They're going to get it as quickly as possible. That's a promise. Quicker, right? Being quick is a promise that you're making. It's not like making a promise that you're going to deliver on the services that they're looking for, that you're going to help solve the problem that they have. It's not just that. It goes beyond that, because everybody else who's going to help them is going to say that. They need to say that they're going to get a home. But how are you going to do it? What are they getting out of working with you instead? If at the end of the process they're going to get a house anyway, why get a house through you, right? Are you going to save them time? Is it going to be cheaper? Is it going to be more expensive? Is it going to be like those different things that you can promise? There's different ways that you can make people believe that working with you is going to be worth it. If we look at a podcast, I have a show that I watch almost every single week. It's called Fragrant. I've watched that show for many, many years. And my expectation is not the same. I don't have the same expectation as when I watch The Diary of the CEO, for example. The Diary of the CEO, the promise Stephen Butler is making to me is I'm going to learn something. Like that is very, very clear. I'm going to learn something. For Fragrant, I might learn something. I've learned a lot of things from Fragrant, but it's not the promise that they're making me, right? The promise they're making me, it's a comedy podcast. I'm just going to have a good time. They're making me a promise to have a good time. It's going to be funny. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to enjoy it. Those two people are making completely two different, they're doing the same thing. They're all recording the podcast and shipping every single week. They're really consistent. But they're making a different promise and they're talking to they're at least appealing to different groups of people. People who watch Fragrant podcast, they're not normally the kind of people who watch The Diary of the CEO. I mean, I watch both. But, You see my point? Like, my point is that you need to have something that people can expect when you come to this podcast, Stories and Starters. That's why I say pursuing an understanding of the world. When I started the show, I, obviously didn't know what I was doing. So I was like talking about everything and anything that comes to me, things that I find interesting. But I had to like get to a point. You can even like go back in the episodes and you see at some point I was like, I'm going to hone in on one single promise. And that promise is pursuing an understanding of the world. And pursuing an understanding of the world is super important to me because, one, I feel like I don't understand a lot of things. I feel like I'm ignorant in many, many different things. And I think it's really, really important to educate myself about money, about relationships, about technology, about, different things. Because when you have the more information that I have about the world and how the world works, the better I'm going to be able to navigate the world. That was my thinking behind picking that as the focus, as the overall focus. But even going deeper, I am at a point in my life where, I have people who depend on me and I have to make money. I have to use my time in a way that makes a return on that investment. And yes, I can say the podcast is going to be about pursuing an understanding of the world, and that is the umbrella. But really, at the moment, it's about pursuing an understanding of money, how to make it, how to invest it, and how to save it. I literally, if you go in my drive, I have like 2026 as the main folder, and then 3 different folders: making money, investing money, and I think saving money or something. And I have all my projects going into making money, and then I have investment, which is where I track everything that I'm doing as far as investment. And I'm genuinely, in my own life, like learning about this and making adjustments to my life according to this chapter of my life that I'm in. And it would be a disservice if I try to focus on something that I'm not in my life. Because this podcast is it's a little bit different than other businesses because it's an extension of me. It's an extension of what I'm into and what I'm interested in. So in that sense, you do have to make a promise that is aligned with your life and where you're trying to go, which is going to tie into the second thing that I'm going to say, the third thing that I learned or was reminded of, which is you need to have a strategy, right? But before I go to you need to have a strategy, part of having a strategy is making that promise. It's like, what's your focus? What can people expect when they log in every single week? What's the commonality between the content that you're putting on the podcast? I think that is really, really important. If your business is not a podcast, what can people expect to get out of working with you? And it should be something other than getting the problem solved. It should be about solving how you solve the problem, right? Amazon is making a different promise than, UPS probably is a better example. UPS is making a different promise compared to FedEx, right? They're all getting your things to you, but the promise they make when they get the things to you are 2 different promises. Okay, make a promise and strive to keep it. Be consistent. It requires a lot of discipline and focus and always adjusting. It's just like kind of like a conversation, like the way I'm like going on tangents and saying, okay, come back, which now I have to come back to. You need to have a strategy. That's the third point. You need to have a strategy. And the strategy is, for me, when it comes to podcasting, at least, a strategy comes down to two things. One, most of people who start a podcast when they don't know what they're doing. It's fine. It's good. I started it that way. I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing for the most part. I think it's okay to start when you don't know what you're doing. And part of the strategy is to say that I'm just like fucking around for the first year to try to understand how to do this. If you know what you're doing, let's say you're a business owner who knows that they want to use the podcast as a distribution channel for their existing business. Like, that is a strategy. Like, you know that you're starting this podcast to promote the business. That's it, right? That is a different game from what, let's say, Chris Williamson is doing. For Chris, the podcast is the business. It's the main business. And the way you approach the two are very, 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 very different. What am I saying? I'm saying that you need to have a strategy. You need to understand, what are you trying to get out of the podcast, out of the business. I keep like using the podcast and the business as interchangeably because I think it's the same thing. What are you trying to get out of the business? Are you trying to exit? Is it a hobby? Are you trying to make money out of it? Are you trying to use it to meet interesting people, have interesting conversations? That is going to determine how you approach the podcast, the topics you talk about, the things that you focus on, the people you have on. Part of the strategy, obviously, is determining what is your promise and who are you making it for. What is the intention behind what you're trying to do? And in the long term, how do you plan to expand it? Like, my ultimate guest is not gonna say yes on the first try, right? I have to build my way towards that. And in the podcast business, part of the strategy is understanding that your previous guests determines who your next guests are going to be. You need to be really, really disciplined in terms of who you choose to have on and what you talk about and what you don't talk about. That sounds like you create from a place of fear. It's not like creating it from a place of fear. It's understanding status. It's understanding affiliation. It's understanding branding. Branding is association of things. And if you associate the podcast with negative topics, with bad production, with terrible conversations, you're not gonna get people that you want to have on the podcast to come on the podcast. But if you are strategic about who you have on and the ideas that you talk about and what you focus on, then it'll be a lot easier to get the kind of people that you want to get on. And then it's a compounding effect. The more people say yes, the more people are going to say yes. Okay, I feel like I'm speaking in broad terms, but I hope it's making sense. Number 4? Yeah, number 4. Respect your viewers' time and attention. It's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned from Mr. Beast, who's the biggest creator in the whole freaking world, which is that you have to respect your viewers' attention. When you have a podcast, you are going to have to respect that someone who's choosing to click on, especially when it's on YouTube. On YouTube, people choose to click on your video podcast. It's not like Instagram where people are just like scrolling through and the algorithm is like feeding them the videos that are on the platform. On YouTube, someone is going on YouTube, they're going on their homepage and they're choosing which video to watch. If they choose to click on your video, you better make sure that it's worth their time, that you are not wasting their time and their attention by not like sharing valuable things. Like before I start making this podcast, I have done my due diligence to like prep and write down things that I wanted to talk about. I do put into the work to try to prepare and to try to do my best, right? You need to do your best. I know that, some days are good, some days are bad, especially when it comes to podcasting and you having to show up and talk. There's a lot of things that might be happening in the background that fucks up with the way you deliver, and maybe you're not as entertaining or you're not as providing as useful of information as you usually do. But make an effort to make it worth for people who watch the thing that you create, because they're using literally the most important assets that anyone have, attention and that time. Yeah. Make an effort to make it worth for them. Respect their time and attention. Keep the momentum. I think, maybe applies to podcasts more than it applies to any other type of business, because when you see it, like when you go back in the back end of the channel, of the YouTube channel, and look at the analytics and see like from when I was like consistent, at the beginning of 2025, I was really, really consistent, like posting every single week. And it started to drop off because I wanted to focus on getting guests on. Excuse me. And you can see like the growth, the way it compounds when I'm consistent, and how it drops off when I'm not. That's from an analytics perspective. But from the ability to do this itself, sitting down and delivering in a way that is engaging and that feels like I'm sharp, in that I'm sharing ideas that are actually going to, speaking of like respecting your time, that are going to be valuable and worth of your time and attention, that comes with doing it consistently. That's why I was shit the first couple months of doing this, of creating, and I had been like creating content for a year before that, right? I had another YouTube channel before I ever had this. And you lose the ability to communicate. You genuinely, like, it's like the same way if you spend time alone and you're not able to talk to people and you don't go out and you don't meet your friends and you don't call your family, you're going to lose your ability to communicate with people, to be social, right? When you stop, you lose momentum. And momentum is everything. Momentum from a compounding perspective, momentum is everything. People who are watching, when you stay consistent, if they know that I'm going to be posting every single Friday at 3 p.m. in the evening or 8 a.m. in the morning, it's going to be a lot easier for the podcast to grow if I can keep that promise. If I can show up every single Friday and post the video, post the podcast. It's going to be part of your routine. It's going to be part of your life. You're going to be expecting it. Subconsciously, you're going to be expecting it. And if I stop, what had become part of your life, what had become part of your habit, is not going to be part of your habit no more. And that's not to say that you should never like stop, you should never take a pause, but it is to say that at least I am trying my best to stay consistent, to keep the momentum going. And I feel like I've stopped so many times. I've started things and stopped them so many times in the past. Things meaning like businesses, before they ever got to a point where they would, bear results that I was looking for. And I want to make sure that this podcast doesn't suffer from the same thing, which it's already suffered from, at least in the last couple months. So this year, we are going to try to be consistent and keep the momentum going. And I would definitely advise you to do the same. It doesn't matter if you have a podcast or not. Okay. Say what only you can say. This comes to both the podcast and any other business. Podcast in a way that if I'm talking to you, like I try to share, I think I connect better when I try to share things that happen to me and things that I experienced, right? I'm giving proof. I'm not just like talking. Like I can talk about running a podcast because I've run it for a year now, a year and a half, I think, more than a year. I can talk about writing because I've written from January to December every single week. And I can talk about the gym because I have been going to the gym every single week for the last 2 years. When you share things, when you talk about things that are part of your life, that are part of your experience, that you have expertise in because you've lived it, it has a little bit more weight than, making up shit that you don't have lived experience or you have not educated yourself enough to. So like it's self-explanatory, but like if you're trying to communicate online, if you're trying to create content, if you have a podcast, you need to say what only you can say. But also it applies to business, because if you have a business, you're probably going to be reaching out to people, leads, meaning like prospective clients, people that you want to work with. And there are only things that you can say, including who you've helped in the past, the stories of the people that you've helped that were facing the same issue that your current prospect is facing, and using the stories of the people, the success stories of the people that you've helped, to get those people to understand that you'll be able to help them. That's an example of you being able to say what only you can say. And the last thing, you need to have a life. This applies more. It applies to business and podcasts, but specifically for the podcast business, I was listening to this podcast called Open Residence by Mark, which is really, really good, by the way. You should check it out. And it was the episode of George Hitton, who co-founded Represent, which is a really, really sick and cool brand. And he said something that I think is really, really important, which is that you have to be cool. You have to find a way to be cool. What he meant by that is that if you're trying to build a fashion brand like him, you have to have some swag about you. And people have to want to be like you, the same way like people want to be like him. Like a lot of people, buy Represent because Represent represents coolness and looking fly. And you can't expect to build a fashion brand without being cool. That's what he meant. But I think that applies to a podcast. It applies to any business. And the way I put it, like you have to have a life. I think being cool comes from having an interesting life. And an interesting life, I think we talked about this in my episode with Serge. I think for me comes down to what you do when you're not doing business. If my business is doing the podcast and having the agency and all the things that I do, if that is my whole life, if that is what I do all the time, and I don't get to try, different restaurants and different dishes and keep like pushing my taste in things, different things like food, wine, people, like meeting different people who have different opinions from me, watching different shows and watching different movies and films and trying to experience life, like different, having hobbies, having things you do, having reading different kinds of books. I think it's really, really, really important to actively, right? Actively, like intentionally, work on being cool, work on being interesting. And there's different ways of being cool. I think for me, being cool is getting to a point where you can completely be yourself, and yourself is in front of other people cool, right? Like you're not like trying to be cool. You are you. You're being yourself, but you've worked on yourself enough. You've worked on being interesting enough that by just being you, by not trying to be cool, you look cool. Does that make sense? I don't know. I think it's really, really important. If you're trying to have a podcast, right? I'm still like working on that, because you gotta be able to say interesting shit. You gotta be able to be funny and be comfortable enough, in your skin, that you come across as interesting and lovable. Lovable? Likeable? Yeah, likeable. You gotta have some likability around you. And the good news is that you can work on that. I have been working on that and I'm still working on that. It's not like you have it or you don't have it. It's something, yes, you might not have it. I don't fully have it. Like I'm still self-conscious as fuck. Like even like through this conversation, I was not coming across as I wanted to come across, at certain points. But I've gotten so much better at being comfortable with myself. And I've invested a lot in expanding my taste in things and in life, in people, in having different conversations and being open-minded enough to have conversations with people that I don't necessarily agree with, that I feel like I have something to share, right? Because that's also like another part of it, is when you have an interesting life, you don't have there's like this thing of like, who am I for you to listen to me? Especially like in the podcast, when I was starting a podcast, who am I for anybody to listen to me? That's because I felt like my life was boring. And by actively investing in making my life interesting, in being cool and living and having a life and feeling like I have something that I can share with someone else that they can find interesting, that they can find useful, by actually doing the shit, right? And trying to build the business myself, giving it everything that I got, like giving it a shot. I learned things that I feel like they can genuinely help someone when I share them. And you can't like make up that shit. Like you can't make up the work. You can't make up the cool. You have to do rad shit. You have to invest in doing really cool stuff. And that's where you can get to a point where you're just yourself and you're cool by just being you. And I think that's probably the coolest thing ever. As someone who struggled with, being anxious and not feeling like I can be myself in so many social situations. I really don't like being in social situations with many groups of people. And maybe there's a side of me that, feels insecure and feels like I don't deserve to be in certain rooms and stuff. I still think that, one, I think it's okay to feel like that, right? What's not okay is not to try to do something about it. is not to try to take steps to make your life so fucking great that you feel like other people being in your presence, you're doing other people a favor by them being in your presence, and that you are the shit, you know. And it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time to get to that point. I think I'm making progress in the right direction, and I'm really, really putting in the work to try to make myself interesting, to live an interesting life. And that comes through the way I show up in so many different instances, including the podcast, including the businesses that I'm going to start, and the business that you might be starting as well. So yeah, those were 7 things that I learned from the podcast, from running the podcast as a business. And I think, some of them are probably going to come up in other episodes, because I think they're really, really, some of them are really fundamental principles that I should be reminded of over and over, because I know this, but I still make many mistakes of forgetting who, I'm talking to, and trying to appeal to everyone, and diverging from the strategy that I set from the beginning. So it's a reminder, but I hope you found something useful in it, and Happy New Year. I hope you kill it. I'm definitely going to lock in. One of the things that I didn't mention, but I might maybe go into details, is that I'm trying to challenge myself not to drink for at least 6 months. I'm only going to be sharing a drink with one person, which makes her very, very special. But I'm not gonna talk about that. Yeah, lock in. I hope you get all the things, all the good things that you are trying to achieve. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace.